In Shapeshifters, Spells, and Secrets, Roz Wells embarks on a journey filled with unexpected encounters and supernatural revelations when she moves to a quirky Boston apartment complex. Upon arrival, the building manager, Dottie, warns Roz about her peculiar neighbors, including Nathan Nuri, nicknamed Nasty Nathan, who works in a morgue and is rumored to have a macabre sense of humor. Roz's primary motivation for the move is to watch over her best friend Mary, recently married to a shapeshifter, highlighting Roz's loyalty amidst a world brimming with magical beings. Dottie, an aspiring travel writer, finds success chronicling her hotel explorations, while Conrad Wolfenson, Roz's nudist neighbor, is relieved of his eviction worries due to his past heroics saving Mary. As the plot unfolds, Roz learns that her new abode houses a diverse array of characters, from shape-shifting falcons Jason and Ralph, to witches Morgane and Gwyneth, and even Nathan, a raven shapeshifter. The revelation that Conrad is a werewolf adds another layer to Roz's newfound reality. Amid personal growth and self-acceptance, Roz delves into astrology readings that resonate deeply, hinting at her underlying desire to protect others from harm and guilt she carries from past failures. Conrad, burdened by his own guilt for failing his Leakin pack, finds solace in these readings, paralleling Roz's journey. The apartment's hidden gem is Sly, Roz's biological father, revealed to be a vampire dwelling in the basement. This discovery underscores the intricate web of relationships and hidden identities within the building. As Roz navigates these uncharted territories, she invites Morgane for tea, seeking insight into Conrad's nature and further integrating herself into the mystical community. The novel intertwines themes of acceptance, redemption, and the complexities of relationships, both human and supernatural. With Morgane's casual attitude towards magic and Chad the Ghost's involvement in solving a cold case, the narrative weaves together humor, mystery, and the exploration of moral boundaries in a world where anything can happen. Ultimately, Shapeshifters, Spells, and Secrets is a tale of finding one's place amidst extraordinary circumstances, challenging perceptions of normalcy, and embracing the strange and wonderful in a world where friendship and loyalty transcend the boundaries of the everyday. Chapter 1. Here are your keys, dear. Thanks for coming upstairs to get them. Now don't let your neighbor across the hall scare you. Roz Wells took the key from Dottie, the apartment manager, and froze. Scare me? Why would he or she scare me? He's Nathan Nuri. She stepped closer to Roz and whispered, I call him Nasty Nathan, and I assumed he might scare you because he scares me. I'm told he's harmless, but oh well, I don't want to influence your opinion by relating my own harrowing experiences. Harrowing? Oh my freaking God. What's wrong with Nathan? That's what I'd like to know. All I can tell you is he works in a morgue and has an odd sense of humor. Downright morbid if you ask me. Maybe she's just easily freaked out. Okay, that doesn't sound so bad. Dottie folded her arms and humphed. You haven't met him yet. If I told you everything, but I won't. I wouldn't want to prejudice you. No, of course not. Roz rolled her eyes. In fact, most of the tenants here may take some getting used to. If I were you, I'd stay away from the women in 3B2. Why? What wrong with them? Well, they seem to have gotten better lately, but they used to scream and holler all the time. Oh, and don't get me started on my neighbor right across the hall here, Conrad Wolfenson, unless you like nudists. But you're on the first floor, so you shouldn't have to see what I've seen. I swear to God, my eyes can never unsee that. Roz wondered if leaving her comfortable apartment in Allston and moving to Boston proper had been a good idea, but she wanted to keep an eye on her best friend Mary, having learned her new husband's secret. She'd confided in her last winter. Mary said she was marrying a shapeshifter. And as crazy as it sounded, Mary was the most down-to-earth and stable person Roz had ever known. There had to be something to it, and Roz needed to know that her best friend in the world hadn't made a horrible mistake. Well, thanks for the warning. I think. Oh, I almost forgot to tell you. You know that I'm Mary's friend, right? Which is why you were standing next to her at her wedding and why you knew her apartment was available before I advertised it. Yes, I remember. Please don't tell her I moved in. I want it to be a surprise. Dottie shrugged. Suit yourself. She'll be in Florida with my nephew while he's in spring training. You know her husband, star pitcher for the Boston Bullets, is my nephew, right? Roz gave her a sardonic smile. I may have heard about that. Like each time I've heard you talking. The door across the hall clicked open and a familiar-looking, gorgeous blonde hunk stepped out of his apartment, a short-sleeved black t-shirt exposed, luscious biceps and stretched across massive, taut pectoral muscles. When he turned around to lock his door, Roz noticed his tight button hair so long it almost reached his waist. Don't drool, don't stare, don't drool. Oh, hello, Conrad, Dottie said with syrupy sweetness. I was just welcoming our new resident. Some welcome. This is Rosalind Wells. Rosalind, this is Conrad. I wish I could shed 30 pounds 20 seconds ago. A hottie like him would never be interested in a lump like me. Oh, you're Mary's friend. He nodded at the key in her hand. Are you moving into 1B, her old apartment? Yes, I am. Why, oh, why did I wear my oldest rattiest sweatpants today? I remember meeting you at the burger restaurant a few months ago, and then I saw you again when you were Mary's maid of honor. You looked ravishing in that blue dress, by the way. Roz was taken aback. Oh no, he isn't gay, is he? Good-looking, sensitive. Notices and remembers details, sheesh. It's always the good-looking ones. But I'll take a compliment wherever I can get it. Mary was usually the one who attracted male attention. Roz had never considered herself memorable in the least. Her figure was less than svelte, and her dark brown hair was too straight to hold a style. She usually just swept it back into a bun for work. At least she liked her eyes. They were big and blue, but her eyeglasses hid them. Wearing glasses gave her an authoritative appearance, good for the courtroom but lousy for dating. You remember me? Of course I remember you. Welcome to our humble abode, Rosalind. He extended his hand and she grasped it. His big warm paw held hers in a surprisingly gentle clasp. Some kind of energy passed between them, something she'd never felt when shaking the hand of a colleague. Call me Roz. I'd hardly call this building humble, Dottie said. That chandelier in the foyer must have cost my nephew a fortune. That chandelier has been there since my hair was short. Your nephew just bought the building when? Last summer. Suddenly the crystals in the chandelier downstairs tinkled and clanged together. Dottie jammed her hands on her hips. For God's sake, Chad, haven't you gone into the light yet? Conrad elbowed Roz's arm. Chad is our resident ghost. Dottie rolled her eyes. Yes, God forbid I leave him out when telling you about the other residents. There's a G-ghost haunting the building? What kind of fresh hell did I just get myself into? Yes, but he won't bother you if he likes you, Conrad said. I didn't even know he was here until the seance. Conrad looked at the chandelier. You leave the new woman alone, all right, Chad? She's a friend of Mary's. Nice of him to intervene for me, but the back of Roz's neck prickled. You held a seance? Sure, didn't Mary tell you? No. I think I would have remembered that. Dottie shook her head. She was the only resident who couldn't make it. Besides my husband, she said she had to work. My husband said he had to keep an eye on the building. I don't know where he thought it was going. Well, I have work to do now, but before I leave you, Roz, you should know that I'm not happy with loud parties or tenants who cause trouble. And I live right above you. Conrad leaned toward Dottie. Is that some kind of threat? I don't recall her saying she's a party animal. Wow, is Conrad this protective of all the tenants, or is it just me? Nah, he and Dottie probably have some kind of history. Oh, you don't have to worry about me, Roz said quickly. I live a quiet life. Not by choice. Good. We'll get along swell then. Dottie gave Conrad a dirty look, stepped into her apartment and closed the door. Can I help you move in? I'm pretty strong. He flexed his sizable muscles. Holy Christmas. I haven't seen muscles like that in ever. Whoa, didn't Dottie say he was a nudist? What I wouldn't give to see, but no. Even if he showed me I'd never show him mine. Weren't you headed somewhere else? Roz asked. No. Would you rather I was? She chuckled. Of course not. I just thought, oh, never mind. It'd be nice to have company while I wait for the movers. Hi, new kid. Chad followed Roz down the stairs. Most of the residents seemed like kids to him. After all, he'd been haunting the place since the 1960s. Okay, so Conrad was older, but he was a werewolf. Other than Conrad, not even the super Ralph or his wife Dottie, or the vampire Sly could claim Chad's age or experience. That's right, kid, we have a vampire. The only reason the landlady didn't mention him was because she doesn't know he's living in the basement. Heh. I'll bet you thought I was swinging from the chandelier, didn't you, kid? Much fun as that would be, I'm afraid my astral body doesn't work that way. It's not like I have an invisible body. I'm a spirit. That means I have no astral ass to sit on. But just like a corporeal person who loses one sense and strengthens the others, I may have lost my body, but I've strengthened my mind to razor sharpness. Yeah, I'm smart as shit. Haha. I wish. Actually, I've learned to use my mind to affect objects, so even though I wasn't literally swinging from the chandelier, I concentrated really hard on the chandelier, swinging until it did. It's called telekinesis. If I were able to ride it, I'd do it every day until the damn thing came crashing down. You have no idea how badly I need entertainment. Chad followed Roz into her empty apartment, continuing to chat at her, as though she could hear every word. After all, he never knew when he might run into a sensitive soul who could sense, hear, or see his presence. Roz glanced up at Conrad. I just want to take a quick look around to figure out where I'm going to put things when the movers come. Would you like me to step outside? Only if you want to. Chad continued, still hopeful. The others in the building don't know much about me except Morgane and Gwyneth. They're the witches in apartment 3B. And they're noisy because they're phone sex actresses. Some of their clients like screamers. Still no reaction from the new tenant. Damn. I like making Dottie and Ralph's ceiling fan spin around. Dottie thinks I'm writing it, and Ralph, who doesn't believe in ghosts, scratches his head and tries to find a logical explanation. A short in the wiring? Oh, come on. It wouldn't work at all if that happened. Roz pulled on her hoodie sweatshirt and fumbled for the zipper. It's cold out. Don't you want to get a jacket? Conrad shook his head. Nah, I'm good. He opened the apartment door as wide as it would go and said, hang on to this a minute. He carried over the marble pedestal table from the foyer and propped the door open, presumably to carry furniture through it. Roz shivered. It's freezing in here too, but I'd better wait to turn the heat on. Otherwise it'll all just rush outside. Oh, maybe she sensed me. Chad floated in front of her and made a scary face. Mew hawahaha. Damn. I hope you're sensitive and just ignoring me because we're not alone. I'm sick of talking to myself all the time. Conrad opened the front door for Roz and held it as she stepped right through. Chad to the outside. Disappointed, he floated back upstairs, hoping to find one of the witches to talk to. Roz and Conrad settled on the front stoop. Conrad sat so close that Roz could feel his body heat radiating into her skin. It felt oddly comforting. Conrad spoke first. I heard Dottie giving you her take on the neighbors and thought I'd try to put your mind at ease. You heard her? Right through your apartment? I didn't realize we were speaking loudly, or are the walls that thin? No, I seem to have extra acute hearing. And kind of cute ears slightly pointed at the ends. So about the neighbors. They're not as bad as she thinks they are. They're not bad at all. Dottie's the crazy one if you ask me. How so? Always sticking her nose into other people's business. She acts like she has to protect her nephew's investment or something. Like one of us is about to burn the place to the ground at any moment. Roz reeled back. Why would anyone do that? You live here too. Exactly. She shook her head. Well, you don't have to worry about her influencing my judgment. I'm an attorney. I form my own opinions based on evidence, not hearsay. Sheesh, you even sound like a lawyer. She chuckled. Comes with the territory, I guess. But I wish I could find some other lucrative line of work. Really? Why? Isn't law fulfilling? Wow, he seems genuinely interested. How rare is that in a man? Plus kind and good looking. Maybe living here won't be so bad, even if he turns out to be gay. Maybe we could go shopping together. Well, to tell you the truth, the job is changing me in ways I don't like. Ah, you're becoming jaded. You said it. That, and it's no fun. I wish I could find a job that I could be passionate about and have fun while I'm doing it. I get that. I'd like the same thing. So what type of law do you practice? I'm a public defender, low on the totem pole, so I get all the weird cases. Tomorrow night's the full moon. I can hardly wait to see what the next day will bring. Conrad laughed. Imagine that. Roz Wells gets the weird cases. You must have some stories to tell. Yeah, too bad about that attorney-client privilege thing. Oh, come on. You can talk in generalities. Some of those stories probably wind up in the news anyway. True. Give me some examples of full moon cases. She sighed. Well, there are the usual extraterrestrial sightings, but with what I call the loonies, there's always an unusual twist. Like zealots with shotguns wearing tin-foil hats for protection? She chuckled. Yeah, or like one time when a guy claimed to see a spaceship melting. Funny how it happened on a hot day on a tar road. Ah, so he was seeing a mirage? Probably. I didn't hear about any melted spaceships. Why did he need a lawyer? It's not against the law to report an extraterrestrial sighting. But shooting out the windows of a melting minivan is kind of frowned upon. Conrad's laugh was deep, sort of like Santa Claus without the ho ho ho. The moon isn't full every night. What do you do the other 27 days? If it's not the nuts, then it's the dregs of society. Drug dealers who hang around playgrounds getting into turf wars with the pedophiles, each one claiming the same street corner. Once I had a not-so-bright client who called the cops on the druggies only to be picked up himself for violating his parole. And of course there are the vandals who like to show off their colorful vocabulary by hating a particular subgroup in graffiti. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a barrel of laughs, but you knew it wouldn't be right. Sure, I knew I'd meet my share of dirtbags, but I also pictured the occasional innocent person I could really help. Most of the time the son of a bitch is probably guilty and lying his head off, but everyone deserves a fair trial, presumed innocent until proven guilty, right? Right. She shook her head. That assumption is rapidly evaporating. Now I look at a defendant and the first thing that pops into my mind is, what the hell did this one do? And what line of bull is he going to feed me? You could go into a different type of law practice. I already have. I used to do civil law. Lots of nasty divorce cases. Conrad groaned. Don't tell me. Now you think all men are scum. Not anymore. It took a while to find the old die-hard romantic in me, but I eventually did. Now I think all men are criminals. Conrad laughed, but there was a nervous edge to it. He scratched the back of his neck, uncrossed his long legs, and crossed them the other way. Roz stretched to get comfortable too. So what do you do? For a living? No, for kicks, nervous boy. Yeah. What kind of work do you do? I work nights. In security. You're a security guard? Well, you have the size for it, but that wouldn't have been my first guess. You sound so well educated. I mean, who uses the word ravishing these days? Oh, not that you couldn't be extremely intelligent and still be a security guard. I didn't mean to. Put your foot in your mouth? Yeah, sorry. That happens when I meet a cute guy. He laughed. Don't worry about it. Actually, I used to be an educator. A teacher? Where? A private school for boys. Before she had a chance to ask him more about it, he was already rerouting the conversation to the present. And now I'm more of a security specialist. I analyze a company's weak spots in its off hours and recommend the best protection to suit each company's individual needs. My brother and I own the business together. Maybe the past isn't something he wants to talk about. He works nights too? Sometimes, but not for the company. He's a cop, but he installs our alarm systems during the day. It's far more lucrative than teaching. I can imagine. Teachers don't get paid enough for all they do. What brought you to our building? Did you move here to be near your friend? Roz wondered why he suddenly shifted the conversation back to her. Seemed kind of abrupt. Yes, actually. But you wanted to keep your being here a surprise until she gets home? Why is that? Roz bit her lower lip and then came out with the truth. I figured after I was all settled in, she wouldn't try to talk me out of it. Conrad leaned away from her and appeared puzzled. Why would she want to do that? Oh, no reason. I was just kidding. No, you weren't. Roz's shoulders slumped. You have one of those built-in lie detectors, don't you? Comes with the teaching gig. Yeah, I'll bet you heard your share of dog eating the homework stories. Oh yeah. Dogs, wolves, something was always eating homework. Wolves. Roz shivered. Where did you teach? Montana. He laughed. No, Newton, Massachusetts, but you should have heard the more creative excuses. Almost made me want to give extra credit for imagination. Such as, you're distracting me from my original question, aren't you? Damn, you're good. What's the answer? What was the question again? He gave her the hairy eyeball. Okay. Do you remember that day Mary and I were having lunch in the burger place? When I was sitting right behind you and overheard her telling you that Jason's a shapeshifter. Roz gasped. You heard that? You know. Yes. I was quite impressed with how well you handled the news. I liked how You were there for your friend no matter what she said or how crazy it sounded. You must be a very open-minded woman. She hung her head. I may not be quite as open-minded as I seemed. I actually want to keep an eye on Mary. I can't do that from Alston. But if she knew my intent, she'd kill me. Her family has been overly protective her whole life. Don't want her to think I am too. But you're worried about her. Naturally. She's my best friend. I don't want to doubt her sanity, but shapeshifters? Really? You're not willing to entertain the possibility of aliens or shapeshifters? I never said that. Roz sighed. Look, I'm used to logic and objectivity. I can't see it with my own eyes. There has to be some kind of explanation. Can't just flex the laws of physics on someone, say so. You have to admit the whole idea is kind of weird, and she means the world to me. I don't want to see anything bad happen to her. Bad? Like what? Are you afraid it's going to rub off on her? No, yes, hell, I don't know. I can't imagine why Jason would make that up. Mean, how did you take it? Weren't you a little weirded out? I was surprised but not weirded out. Is weirded a word? It is now. He smiled and bumped her arm playfully. Then he cleared his throat. You may have moved to the wrong place if you're easily, weirded. Yeah, now that I know there's a ghost here as well as an alleged shapeshifter. Holy crap. Conrad glanced the other way and mumbled something under his breath. What was that? Oh look, there's the moving van. Yup. It looks like their GPS is working. Conrad kissed her on the forehead, rose, and jogged down the stairs to meet them as if he were the one moving in. Surprised, Roz touched the spot and it tingled. He's like a big friendly Great Dane. Geez, I hope he's not gay. Conrad slid into a booth across from his identical twin brother. Nicholas. We've got to be even more careful now. A lawyer has moved into my building. She's a public defender, but they know people. Crap. First a private dick and now a lawyer. Like attracting like again. Maybe. This one's cute though. Kind of has that sexy secretary thing going on. Looks innocent as vanilla, but underneath there's something very spicy. She even smells like cinnamon. Steer clear, bro. She could be trouble. Conrad leaned against the padded vinyl back. What if I don't want to? Nicholas leaned back too and folded his arms. Are you out of your mind? Should I remind you what you do for a living? A thief and a lawyer, aren't they? Match made in heaven. Unless God has a really twisted sense of humor. The attempted robbery gig is temporary. It's always been temporary. Besides, her job sounds temporary too. She's trying to find a whole new line of work. Being an attorney doesn't agree with her. Nicholas grinned and leaned forward. Maybe she could become a librarian. Conrad almost sighed aloud as he fantasized. Wouldn't that be nice? I can picture her in glasses, riding the rolling ladder in my living room library. The ladder you'll never need unless you're chopped off at the knees? Conrad chuckled. Hey, it goes with the old world look of the place. A waitress strolled over to take their lunch orders. They both ordered rare steaks, bloody with cold centers and no side dishes. She wrinkled her nose, but jotted it down and left them to continue their conversation. How tall is she? About 5'6" or 7. You're about a head taller. She'd need the ladder just to look you in the eye. Nick grinned wickedly. Or you could find more interesting uses for it. It's probably been gathering dust, just like you have. Is that a crack about my social life? No, it's a comment on your lack of one. But you should wait to ask her out. Until one of you finds another line of work. Yeah. So what job do you have for me this time? A boutique? A jewelry store? What? Nope, this heist is unusual. It's a restaurant downtown. They have a free standing freezer plus one of those dessert display cases. Crap, those weigh a ton. I'm sure you can lift them. No mere mortal could, that's for sure. Conrad sighed. Fine. You're sure they have no cameras? No alarms? Remember last time? That was close. If I hadn't shifted and growled, scaring the damn dogs out of their minds. No dogs either. No security whatsoever. Not even a deadbolt. I'll bet you could get in with a credit card. Well, since I don't have any, I'll have to borrow one of yours. Yeah, right. Like I'm going to hand over my credit card to my deadbeat brother. Thanks a lot, Rudo. Be nice. And exactly what am I supposed to do with these things once I get them outside? Leave them on the sidewalk. Make it look like you were scared off. Oh, but bring me home some steaks and a Boston cream pie. You know how much I love those. Conrad shook his head. Man, I'm glad I don't have to carry the equipment. Far. Yeah, we just want the owners inconvenienced enough to want an alarm system. And then I'll conveniently drop in. Sounds good. When do I do it? Tonight. Tonight? Are you sure? It's almost that time of the month. What if I get caught and locked up? You won't. Easy for you to say. Nick tucked his napkin into his collar to protect his uniform. You're always careful. Yeah, I wouldn't want to miss a run through the Arboretum. We're on for tomorrow at midnight as usual. Absolutely. Are you planning to go to Newton after that? You know I have to keep an eye on the pack. No, you really don't. They kicked you out and replaced you with another. Alpha. How can you possibly feel any responsibility toward them? I just do. You've got tomorrow evening off, don't you? Of course. It's the full moon. It's a good thing there are so many werewolves on the Boston police force, especially the ones who arrange your schedule. If you do the job tonight, you'll be nearly at full strength. True. Pretend your sexy librarian is watching. Muscles get the ladies hot. Yeah, that'll work. Conrad rested his chin on his fist and drifted off into a fantasy of Roz Wells without baggy sweats. Chapter 2. Arg, this sucker weighs a ton. Conrad's muscles ached as he struggled under the weight of the freezer. Shouldn't have had that chocolate cake. He had propped open the back door of the restaurant using the tall, cylindrical dessert case. All that remained of the third shelf were crumbs, and his stomach hurt. As he managed the few steps that led to the alley, he muttered, Damn, Nicholas, why can't he take a turn once in a while? Just because he's a cop. Hey you, what are you doing? He froze. Fuck. Conrad tipped the freezer back enough to see who had called out. He lost his precarious balance, and the huge chest slid out of his grasp. Falling backward, he hit the curb with his hip. Ow, damn it. A second later, the freezer hit the street with such force it may have cracked the pavement. Conrad rolled to the side as quickly as he could, but the heavy ice chest pinned his leg to the ground. It held him just long enough for the witness, who looked like a homeless guy, to yell for the cops. Shit. I should have checked the boxes and crates in this damn alley first. If only the guy would move out of view, Conrad could shift and reappear as a big dog limping away, but the shift would take a couple of minutes, and who knew how fast the cops would get there? An unreliable witness might be dismissed or might not. To expose his shapeshifter capabilities might be worse than getting caught. His muscles vibrated as he tried to lift the dead weight off his leg. Unfortunately, he had to remain in human form or risk exposure, the very worst thing that could happen to a werewolf. To expose the existence of one would lead to witch hunts for others, maybe even government experiments. Being dissected would really suck. By the time he pushed the freezer aside enough to free himself, a uniformed cop on horseback came charging down the alley. Conrad shook his head and mumbled, Too late. Caught by the damn Mounties. While Conrad waited in his cell, he reflected on his life with a good dose of self-pity. In 1922, he and his brother had been running away from home and, while making their way through the woods at night, they happened upon a werewolf council meeting. They were turned and taken into the pack to prevent exposure. Even back then it was a werewolf's greatest fear. As long as humans didn't believe werewolves existed, they were safe. He had worked his way up to the alpha leader of the Newton pack. Yes, Newton, Massachusetts. He was proud of how completely he and his brother had been able to blend in, even in a pricey neighborhood. He helped found a private school for troubled boys and subsequently became the dean of students. Life was good, until he took in a lone wolf named Petrosky, who had used Conrad's tendency toward kindness to oust him. The newcomer managed to poison the pack's opinion of him. Petrosky challenged him for alpha status and by cheating won. Now Conrad sat in a jail cell for the first time in his life without the support of his pack and without the help of his brother. With a breakfast that, no matter how hungry he was, he couldn't wolf down. He wanted to howl at the sun. Wolfenson, you've got a visitor. The guard startled him out of his pity party. Conrad stood and groaned still, sore from the night's activities. He stretched as he waited for his cell door to open. He could easily overpower the guard and escape, but curiosity got the better of him. No one knew where he was, so who'd come to see him? Did Nick hear about it? He followed the guard past the long row of occupied jail cells. It had obviously been a busy night for the Boston PD. He and the guard stopped at the end of the corridor in front of a door with a small window. The guard opened the door and told him to go ahead inside and sit on the far side of the wooden table. A woman wearing a gray suit with her brown hair twisted into a bun sat in the seat closer to the door. "Ah, you must be the lawyer they promised me." She turned her head enough to see his face, and he recognized her. Roz. Holy crap. Way to make a good impression. "Good morning, Conrad." She opened the folder on the table and said, "I'd hoped there were two people with the same name. I never expected to see you here." She waved him over to the seat on the opposite side. Conrad gulped. He slowly made his way to the other side of the table and sat down gingerly. "Would you prefer another attorney? Not that there are a lot of us, but if you're uncomfortable." "No, I want you, to represent me, I mean." "Oh God. Of all the public defenders. But maybe, I really need your help, Roz. And I trust you to do your best, since I'm that rare innocent victim of the system you spoke of." Roz nodded to the guard, and he left them alone. "It figures I'd be attracted to another loser. Damn. Just my freaking luck. Why can't I find a great guy like Mary did?" Roz cursed her terrible taste in men. Just one more thing to blame on her stepfather. "You're being charged with breaking and entering and attempted grand theft. Are you aware of the process?" "Process? The legal proceedings?" "No. This is the first time I've been arrested." He hung his head. She saw tears welling up in his eyes, and her heart automatically constricted. What should she do? Show sympathy? Try to face it like an impartial attorney? She sighed. Until she knew the whole story, she'd have to put on her best poker face. "Well, that should help. Give me a minute to look over the police report." She tried to maintain a professional distance and demeanor, but the details of what she was reading sounded so ridiculous she wanted to laugh. Either that, or reach out and squeeze his hand, telling him everything would be all right. The charge was preposterous. He couldn't have done what the witness said he did. And what a witness! A street person? He was probably drunk or hallucinating or both. She doubted the police would even be able to find him. If the case went to trial, which it wouldn't, she'd get it dismissed if it was the last thing she did. "What were you doing in that alley late at night?" Conrad's expression didn't waver. "Just taking a walk. Some people like long walks on the beach. I like long walks around the city. I like long walks too, but not at 3 in the morning and certainly not in back alleys. There's less traffic. I can think better when it's quiet. And who would mug me?" Did she imagine it? Or did he just flex his pecs? Either way, she had to look down and not at the hot guy in front of her. Christ, I better take some deep breaths and clear my head. "Okay, so let's say you were just out for a walk. And then what happened?" He shrugged. "Come on. Are you telling me a 500-pound freezer fell out of the sky and hit you? Because the police report said there was no heavy equipment nearby. No way to lift it. Yet the witness said he saw you carrying it out of a restaurant on your back." Conrad laughed. "I was passing by and wondered what it was doing there. Tried to lift it, to at least get it out of the street, but it toppled over. Fortunately, it was only my pants leg that got pinned." Roz took a deep breath. "Well, first is the arraignment. That will happen today. If the judge feels there's a case, he'll set bail." "Bail? How much do you think that'll be?" "Well, nothing if I can get the charges dropped, and that's what I intend to do." "Really? Do you think you can?" Roz leaned back in her chair. "You never know what will happen, but the witness claims he saw you carrying the freezer, fully loaded with frozen meats on your back. Hang on a minute." Roz opened her laptop and typed in commercial freezers. She found one about the same size as the one Conrad had allegedly picked up and carried. "Okay. This size and type of restaurant freezer weighs about 500 pounds. Empty and holds 57 cubic feet of frozen food. And the police report states it was filled with frozen beef, fish, and chicken. How much weight do you think that would add?" "I can guess since I do my own shopping and cooking. Let's see, by my estimate, a cubic foot of equal amounts of those items weighs about 25 pounds. That's 1,425 pounds. Combined with the weight of the freezer itself, you would have had to pick up and carry about 1 ton. Is that even humanly possible?" Conrad laughed. "It sure isn't. No human could possibly accomplish that. Think the world record for weightlifting is about half that. Roz nodded. Let me double check that. She typed in weightlifting world records. What she read confirmed it. Perfect, so between that and a less than credible witness, I think there's a good chance of getting you off. Getting him off? What is wrong with me? She felt her cheeks heat. Conrad simply smiled. Damn, my Freudian slip is showing, and he noticed. Roz ruffled the papers in front of her and jotted down some notes. It had obviously been too long since she'd had sex. She noticed her panties dampening. When she glanced up, he was still smiling at her. Maybe planting the seed of, that idea isn't the worst thing I've ever done. After the arraignment, Conrad asked Roz to join him for lunch. Fortunately, she had no more cases, so they decided to grab takeout and enjoy a long walk home. The sunny sky held the promise of a warm spring day. You were brilliant. Conrad hoped he hadn't blown his chances with his sexy attorney and neighbor. Ah shucks. I'll bet you say that to all the public defenders. His smile faded and his gaze dropped to the sidewalk. It really was my first and only arrest, but I know how you feel about the guys you defend. I guess you aren't interested in me now. I was hoping to ask you out. She touched his arm and the spot tingled. This is different. You were innocent. If only Conrad hated to deceive her, but there was no way he could explain his abilities without exposing what he was, and therefore the existence of his kind. Not to mention that he needed time to discover if she could be his mate. He had the sneaking suspicion that the beautiful lawyer might just be the one, and he had to check out that theory. If he didn't, he could spend his whole life wondering. She smiled up at him. So, where do you want to eat lunch? Indoors or out? He contemplated her soft expression and glanced up just in time to witness a child drop his mother's hand and dart out into traffic. The mother screamed, and Conrad dropped their bag of takeout, rushing after the child without a thought. He scooped up the little boy seconds before a car's brakes squealed. The car hit Conrad, but even as he staggered, he held the boy steady. The tot was untouched. The mother cried out, "Oh, thank God!" Even though Conrad limped to the sidewalk, it was mostly an act. The car bumper was dented, so he had to make it look good. As he passed the boy to his relieved mother, he winced. She hugged her son close and stared at Conrad. Oh my goodness. Are you hurt? I'll be fine. Probably just a bruise. Nothing broken. The driver of the car rolled down his window and yelled, "Hey lady, keep your friggin' kid out of the street." Conrad turned to him and said, "We're fine. Thanks for asking." The driver flipped him the bird and sped off. If you hadn't been there. Tears welled up in the mother's eyes and she bit her lower lip. I'm just glad I was able to help, ma'am. He glanced at Roz for the first time since he'd bolted into the street. Her mouth hung open and her eyes were wide with awe. Are you sure you're okay? Roz asked. I mean, you took a pretty hard hit. Nah, I'm made of strong stuff. I drink lots of milk, rich in calcium. The woman grappled for her purse. Sir, let me give you a reward. Ah, heck no. I'm just glad I saw what was happening in time to stop it. I insist. Tell you what. Take the money and buy one of those child harnesses. He ruffled the boy's hair. Some precocious children need to be protected from themselves. She smiled and nodded. Thank you. I will. I'm truly grateful. She squinted at the kid and said, You're in the doghouse, young man. And just for that, I'm getting you a leash. I can't believe you saved that child without getting killed. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. I guess I wasn't thinking at all. Just reacting to the situation. You were so brave and so selfless. And so amazing and so hot. He smiled and placed a finger under her chin. Tipping her face up, he bent low, hovering just over her lips. Can I have a kiss as my reward? I'm sure the boy's mother would have kissed you if you'd asked. She was teasing but also trying to keep her distance. After all, he had just been in trouble with the law. I didn't want to kiss her. I'm asking you. I'm melting. Roz slipped her arms around his neck and closed her eyes. He held her in a surprisingly gentle embrace and closed the short gap between their lips. The pressure was just right. Firm but not bruising. He opened his mouth slightly and slanted his head, allowing her to deepen the kiss if she wanted to. She answered by slipping her tongue past his teeth, but something sharp pricked her. She almost pulled away, but his big paw of a hand cradled her head and kept Her mouth fused to his. He slipped his tongue past her lips and lapped at the sore spot. Suddenly the pain faded and disappeared. Roz let her body mold to his and felt petite in his arms. Now that's a first. The hot, drugging kiss continued, right there on the sidewalk, heedless of passers-by and traffic. The world fell away, and soon the only thing she could name that existed outside herself was his arousal nudging her stomach. She even wanted to incorporate the hard length inside her body and join with him completely. Whoa, where did that thought come from? It came from us, darling. Roz snapped out of her trance. Pulling away, she mumbled. Well, what just happened? Conrad kissed her forehead and smiled. I think it's called telepathy. You heard me. Yes, as if you were speaking inside my head. Shocked, Roz lost the power to communicate or breathe. Conrad stroked her cheek with his thumb. It's never happened to me before. But I've heard of it. Certain members of my family can do it with their people they're very close to. She inhaled deeply and tried to steady herself. Well, I've never heard of it happening to anyone at all. She remembered what he'd heard, and heat rose to her cheeks. To tell you the truth, I'm a little embarrassed you overheard what I was thinking. I'm not sure I want anyone listening to my warped mind. Conrad wrapped an arm around her and gave a side squeeze. Don't worry, I won't tell a soul how warped you are. Hey. He laughed. I was just messing with you. I think you're beautiful. Inside and out. She gazed at him as if mesmerized. No man had ever said she was beautiful, at least not convincingly, but his eyes were telling the truth. He really thinks I'm beautiful. Inside and out. Now cut that out. I just said I don't want you listening to me while I'm thinking. Then don't think so loud. Don't think so what? I doubt I hear all of your thoughts, just the ones that come across clearly. Roz crossed her arms and pouted. Oh, that's just great. Now I'll have to keep my mind a jumble in order to have any privacy. Conrad shrugged. This is new to me too. I guess we'll have to figure it out together. Let's go home. He kept his arm around her and guided her to walk beside him. She wanted to slip her arm around his waist too, but regardless of what just happened, it seemed too soon. Maybe I can talk to my brother about it. He might know if there's a shut-off button. Has he experienced telepathy? No, but he's closer to the rest of the family than I am. He can probably ask them for me. Oh, you've had a falling out with your family? You could say that. I don't know what I'd do without my mother and brother. My stepfather can go to hell though. What did your stepfather do? Oh damn. Did I think that out loud? He smiled. Don't worry, I won't tell. But I'd like to know so I don't do the same thing. She snorted. If you did, the circumstances would be totally different. Like, mutually consensual. Oh no. You mean he? Get the fuck out of my head, will you? Conrad stopped walking and leaned over to give her a warm, tender hug. He whispered in her ear. I'm sorry that happened to you. She gently pushed him away. It wasn't when I was a kid or anything. I was in high school and it only happened once. He came home from a party drunk. My mother went right to bed. He came into my room uninvited and tried to kiss me a little too amorously. He put his hand on my breast and I shoved him off. Crap. That must have been frightening. Yeah, not to mention disgusting. Did your mother ever find out? Yeah, I told her even though he told me not to. He said it was my word against his and he'd deny it, but I figured she deserved to know. That was brave of you. A lot of girls would have kept it bottled up inside and acted out in some other way. Did she protect you? She booted his ass soon after I told her. Then we both went to counseling. He squeezed her shoulder and continued walking. Thank God for that. Some mothers don't believe their own daughters. I saw some of that as a teacher. That's when the kids act out to get the attention of anyone who might help. Yeah, in that way I was fortunate. How old were you? 17. Too old to call anything that might have happened statutory rape, but too young to be a legal adult. Damn. If he'd pushed it, I hope you'd sue his ass off. That would have been difficult. My stepfather was a lawyer. He said he'd make me look like I was totally crazy if I tried to ruin his reputation. She looked up at Conrad with a sad smile. And what teenager hasn't acted totally crazy from time to time? He shook his head. Well, at least you got counseling to help you put it in perspective. Is your mother okay? My mom is strong. She put us kids first. After she threw him out, she threatened to take him for everything he owned if he contested the divorce. Did anything happen to your brother? No, except he wanted to kill my stepfather when he found out. He was always my protector. Well, now you have me. Surprised, Roz stiffened momentarily, then offered him a weak smile. Thanks. That's sweet of you, but we just met. So, Roz chuckled. Seems like I've picked up another protector whether I like it or not. Oh, you'll like it all right. She halted and her eyes widened. Oh no, I didn't mean that the way it sounded. Please don't worry. I'll never pressure you. A second later the thought, I hope, popped into his mind. Roz took a couple of steps away from him. You hope? What the hell does that mean? I would never. It's just that I'm so attracted to you, it's like, I can't explain it. Just know that I'll never hurt you or let anyone else hurt you. Either. He shook his head vigorously. Never ever. He enveloped her in a tender hug. I promise. His mate. He'd found her. At last. Telepathic communication didn't happen by accident. He had heard of it only in mated couples. Even then, not every couple was lucky enough to experience it. His canine tooth accidentally scraped her tongue. Her blood must have triggered the telepathy. Now he was burning to find out if they were compatible in bed, but if he rushed her, he could scare her off, especially with her history. She interrupted his thoughts. What's so special about my history? Huh. You were saying, or rather thinking something about my history. Something special. Oh, it was nothing. Damn, this telepathy is going to be a pain in the ass. Tell me about it. Shit. You heard that too. Roz giggled. This is really weird. Kind of fun but totally bizarro. Conrad took a deep breath. Let's go home and try not to think until we get there. Are you up for a jog? Sure. If I get tired, I'll walk and meet you there. Or I can carry you. Roz burst out laughing. Yeah, right. I may not weigh as much as a ton of frozen food, but I'm no lightweight. Sure you are. He turned his back to her and squatted slightly. Hop on. What? Are you nuts? You want to give me a piggyback? Why not? We're going to the same place, and we want to get there quickly. I'll slow you to a crawl. Try me. Roz folded her arms. I'm not getting on your back. Why not? Because I weigh too much. And I don't want you to know how much too much. Suit yourself. Conrad turned back toward her and scooped her up in his arms. She shrieked. As he strode off in the direction of their building, only a few more blocks away, she wriggled in his grasp. Put me down. If you don't stay still, I might drop you. Fucking caveman. Did you know that contrary to popular opinion, the cavemen were neither slovenly nor dim-witted? Regardless of having no manuals, no education, no knowledge of science or mathematics at all, they managed to live beyond puberty to raise the next generation. That points to intelligence. What are you, Mr. Wikipedia? Did you just Google cavemen? No, I'm trying to impress you. It's also agreed that language has been around for 1,000,000 years or more. They developed language in order to communicate with each other. To do that, they must have been extremely intelligent. Yeah, you're a freaking rocket scientist. Now put me down. I'm too old to be carried like a baby. I've got a better idea. He set her on her feet. Phew, finally. Conrad dipped down and came up with Roz draped over his shoulder. She gasped. If you're going to accuse me of being a caveman, I might as well act like one. Roz thumped him on his back. Put me down this minute. Just relax and enjoy the ride. I don't usually hear that until I make it to the bedroom. Conrad laughed but ignored her plea and strode off in the direction of their building as if she weighed no more than a sack of tennis balls. He added to her embarrassment by whistling. Oh, very nice. What if I have to fart while I'm up here? Then fart. We're traveling downwind. Roz giggled and bounced along with Conrad's long strides. I give up. Good. It's your hernia. You're not as heavy as you think. So many women have negative self-images. You think you have to be bony to be beautiful when it's the opposite for most guys. Oh, really? Well, I guess I can't speak for the entire male population, but most guys I know like a little meat on their women. He patted her ass. A passing couple laughed. Oh, for Christ's sake. Do you have to embarrass me completely and totally? If that's what it takes to convince you that you're ravishing. She sighed. Ravage me when we get back to your place and I might believe. You. Conrad slowed his march. Did you mean for me to hear that? Put me down and I'll tell you. He quickly set her on her feet and grasped her shoulders to steady her. She looked up into his serious face and took a risk. Yeah, I meant it. He straightened and his eyes widened. I'll race you. They grinned at each other and took off running the final block to their building. Chapter 4. A few days later, Morgane took a seat at the only table in the room. She sensed it had been for holding canapes and a floral centerpiece at cocktail parties, so not her thing. Okay, remember how we all held hands at the seance? When the medium contacted Chad. Conrad nodded. Well, if Reginald is going to talk to you through me instead of just communicating with me through my mind, I'll need all the extra energy I can get. Would you mind? Not at all. Conrad sat opposite Morgane at the highly polished table and extended his reach. Thanks. Morgane clasped Conrad's hands, closed her eyes and took several deep breaths to clear her energy. The parlor was illuminated only by natural light and one white candle. She hoped Reginald wouldn't be shy about talking through her to a stranger, but she had prepared him by introducing Conrad as a security expert. Reginald, are you willing to speak to my friend through me? She waited a few moments then sat up ramrod straight, as if a broomstick had been inserted you nowhere. Greetings. The much lower voice of a man spoke through her mouth. Conrad responded with, hello. Are you Reginald? Who else would I be? Conrad sighed. Is there a problem? Reginald asked. Oh, nothing. Are all ghosts so snippy and sarcastic? I beg your pardon? Did you just insult me? It's just that you remind me of the only other ghost I know. I need to ask a few questions to help Morgane. Are you willing to answer them? Ordinarily I'd never speak to a man in such dire need of a haircut, but if you can catch these felons and put them away, I'll do what I can. Okay. Under his breath Conrad mumbled, talk about insults. What was that? Reginald asked in an angry tone. Never mind. What can you tell us about the robbery? As I told the woman with the funny name, I saw the cops come in, hit the guards over their heads, tie them up with duct tape and rob the place. You know those weren't real Boston cops, don't you? How would I know that? Come to think of it, how would you know that? Were you there? No. Well then. A long sigh emitted from Morgane's mouth. They took my favorite Degas 3 mounted jockeys. There were 3 of them? No, you dolt. The name of the painting was 3 mounted jockeys. You know nothing about art, do you? I know more than the average American. That's probably true. Ha! I cannot believe how stupid people are in this day and age. Well, back to the matter at hand. There were 2 robbers. Fine. Can you give me descriptions? I'm sure the 2 guards gave the police their descriptions, but because I'm in a generous mood, I'll try to remember. They were both Caucasian. One was about 6 feet and the other slightly shorter. They wore fake mustaches and spoke with what passes for a Boston accent these days. Not the eloquent accents of my time, but an uncultured dialect that made them sound ignorant and uncouth. They used foul language too. Did you notice anything else? Perhaps the thieves said something to each other after they stashed the guards in the basement. How did you know about that? Perhaps you were in on it. I read it in the newspaper. Why are you so suspicious of me? Oh, no reason. I just don't believe a security expert should have hair longer than the woman he's with. Let's get back to the case. Did they say anything about already having a buyer? They mentioned getting the stuff into the automobile and driving to Revere. Revere? That's a huge new clue. What else? Well, they had a list. It sounds like they knew exactly what their buyer or buyers wanted. Yes, and someone knew the value of these items. Like a bronze beaker from the Shang dynasty. It was at least 3,000 years old, possibly 4. In other words, priceless. Did they take anything not on the list? Only a Rembrandt etching that was postage stamp size. A self-portrait. Imagine they thought they could hide it pretty easily. Probably. They may have tried to fence it themselves. That would be helpful. If the piece ever surfaces, could lead us directly back to the thieves. Then they could tell us where the rest of it went. The police and FBI were all over this place collecting evidence and questioning the staff. I can't believe they haven't caught the hooligans. Been 20 years. I imagine the FBI has done all the right things. Maybe they were in on it. Conrad snorted. I doubt it. But they had police uniforms and guns. Those can be bought. And the patches that said Boston Police? They may have made or stolen those. My twin brother is a Boston cop. He might be able to ask some of the veterans about it. Oh, so that's why you don't want to believe the police are in on it. Your brother is a flatfoot. Conrad bristled. Look, most cops are honest, hard-working individuals who put their lives on the... Male laughter interrupted Conrad. His grip tightened and he growled. Morgane let go of his hands, swayed and leaned over. Conrad shot to his feet and grabbed her shoulders before she hit the table. Morgane, are you all right? She took a few panting breaths and opened her eyes. Yeah, I'm fine. Where did Reginald go? I don't know. I imagine he's still around. I just had to intervene. You two weren't getting along very well. No kidding. I have the feeling old Reggie doesn't like cops. Maybe he wasn't squeaky clean himself. If we want information, you two have to play nice. Morgane suddenly sat bolt upright, opened her mouth, and spoke with the formal male voice again. Don't call me Reggie, and I won't call you Connie. Being a disembodied spirit isn't easy. How would you like to try it, Is that a threat? What could I possibly threaten you with? Unless it's withholding information. You wouldn't. A long silence followed, with Morgane holding her stiff position. Oh, come on. Don't be childish, Conrad said. Childish? How dare you? I was born in 1890. I'm well over 100 years older than you. No, you're not. We're barely a generation apart. I was born in 1912. Loud male laughter exploded from Morgane's mouth. I'll prove it. Conrad stood and stripped. Oh my, you're rather like a work of art yourself. What big muscles you have. My dear. Conrad grinned, growled, and began to shift. His hair seemed to shrink inside his head and sprout elsewhere on his body. His nose and chin extended, and his back rounded. As he fell forward, his hands and arms became paws and legs. A long, loud male scream resounded that could have been heard from the sidewalk outside. Conrad shifted back and dressed quickly. Morgane felt Reginald practically rip himself out of her and flee. She wavered a moment and braced her hands on the table. Conrad lowered himself to the chair opposite her as if nothing had happened. Morgane crossed her arms and glared at him. Did you have to do that? I've never seen you change. It even freaked me out. Sorry, but I hate being patronized. So do I, but you don't see me flying around on a broomstick every time someone pisses me off. Conrad shrugged. I figured it was important that he understand that not everyone fits in his narrow view of mankind. Some of us aren't even human and have much longer lifespans. That's it? That's all you have to say for yourself? This was my first case. And you probably blew it for me. I'm sorry. You're right. Maybe if I apologize to Reginald. I doubt he'll ever speak to me again. And he certainly won't speak to you. I'm very sorry. Maybe I can think of something to salvage the situation. The door to the parlor flew open and the curator rushed in. What happened? Thought I heard a scream. Morgane and Conrad rode the subway back to their neighborhood in silence. Was just as well. Conrad couldn't think of much to say in the way of apology. He really couldn't blame Morgane if she never spoke to him again. As they strolled toward their building, Morgane said, I'm glad you thought fast and said you screamed because you thought you saw the ghost. I have a feeling the curator didn't believe me. Probably because you don't look like the type of guy to shriek in fear. Besides, Reginald's voice doesn't match the timbre of yours, even coming out of my mouth. He chuckled. Yeah, I don't scream like a little girl. Well, I almost did when I opened my eyes and saw you changing back. You've never seen me change before? He grabbed the brass door handle but refrained from opening the front door. How could I? By looking out your window, although I usually come back before dawn and sly. Lets me in. I don't know if you're up that early. Or you could catch me at night, but ever since Jason installed the motion detector, it's bright as hell out there, so I have to find a dumpster to hide behind where I can stash my clothes and shift. That must be nerve-wracking. What if Jason or Mary pulled into their parking spots just as you were shifting? Yeah, believe me, I worry about that. I can cast a spell to shield you from view whenever you shift, if you like. Conrad almost gasped. You can. I believe so. I haven't actually tried to put a spell on a werewolf before. Might have to tweak it a bit. He glanced at the apartment to the right of the front door. Listen, don't say anything to Roz about me. Okay? Morgane placed her hands on her hips and frowned. You're going to tell her? Though. Yes, when the time is right. When the hell that'll be, I don't know. She seemed to relax, so he opened the heavy front door and held it for her. Pausing at the bottom of the stairs, she said, Well, thanks for your help. I'm really sorry. No need to apologize. I didn't really know what would happen. I took a chance and it didn't work out. She sighed. Back to the drawing board. You know who might be able to help you with Reginald more than I can? Who? Roz. She has a way of drawing people out. I've heard her deal with different, delicate situations very calmly and non-judgmentally. Plus she knows what kind of evidence is admissible in court. I think she'd be perfect. Is she home? Why don't we find out? I told her I'd call on her today anyway. Oh, and just so you know, I'm going to tell her I got fired from my, job. Why? Because I don't want to do it anymore. Why not just say you quit? Because I really don't want to go back to it. Morgane laid a hand on his arm. I admire that. Will she believe you? He shrugged. She has no reason not to. Okay, give it a try. Morgane waited behind him while Conrad lifted the brass door knocker and rapped on Roz's door. She opened it and beamed up into his smiling face. Good afternoon, ma'am. May I interest you in buying some magazines today? Only if you deliver them in person, naked, holding a bottle of champagne. She said and gave him a come-hither look. She stepped back and opened the door. Wider. Clearing her throat, Morgane said. Dottie has rules about public nudity, but it wouldn't bother me. Roz glanced into the hall and gasped when she realized they weren't alone. Conrad cringed. Sorry. I should have said that. Morgane's waiting to ask you something. Oops. Roz blushed. When Morgane stepped forward, she said, Don't be embarrassed. Think it's cute when couples flirt. Roz let out a small giggle and said, Come in, both of you. Have a seat. Morgane sat on Roz's antique-looking couch, while Conrad wandered around and looked at her things. He didn't figure her for an antique buff. An old roll top desk. A tall wooden cabinet with a glass panel holding thick tomes that he assumed were law books. Lots of fragile-looking furniture he wouldn't dare put his full weight on. Can I get you guys anything to drink? No thanks, Morgane said. Roz sat next to her on the sofa. So what did you want to ask me? I guess I should start at the beginning. I'm a psychic witch and a medium. Roz nodded, but her expression didn't change. Conrad blew out a breath of relief. Phew, she handled that pretty well. But then he remembered she knew enough about Morgane already, like leading a seance with Chad, so the information might not come as a shock. I've been hired to work with a new witness who was present during the theft at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. Roz grew more animated. Really? There's a new witness? So there might be hope of catching those douchebags who robbed the place after all. Yes, we've already gained some new information, but we don't know how much of it can be used in court. Why is that? Because the new witness is a ghost. Roz's mouth dropped open. It didn't come home with you, did it? It's okay, darling. I'm right here. You're perfectly safe. Are you sure? Ghosts freak me the hell out. Don't you feel uncomfortable around them? No. Even if the room were full of them, they can't hurt you. Ugh. That would be like thinking you're alone in the bathroom while attending a peeping Tom convention. She quickly recovered her neutral demeanor and said, A ghost? Haunting the museum? Yes, so if we learn anything from Reginald, that's the spirit's name, do you think it could be used to claim the reward? I don't want the court to say it's bunk and cheat me out of my money if I help recover the art. Roz rose to her feet and paced as she talked. Has the ghost's presence been substantiated? Well, yeah. I've talked to him. Conrad spoke up. So have I. There are 2 of us who can attest to his being there. Roz's eyebrows rose as she focused her sharp gaze on Conrad. You can talk to ghosts too. Oh no, I didn't mean that. Morgane did her medium thing while I was there. I heard his voice coming through her mouth. Roz nodded. Freaky, but okay, continue. Well, Morgane said, the curator sensed his presence and admitted a couple of visitors claimed to have seen him. I'll have to check precedents, but I imagine we can't use sensing a presence. Even a sighting could be explained away. But I'm curious about your being a medium. Can you prove you have that, gift? Sure. She looked to Conrad. Does she know about Chad? Yes. I asked him not to bother Roz, but I don't know if he listened to me or not. Would you mind a demonstration if I can get Chad to cooperate? Morgane asked. Roz sat up straighter. Actually, that sounds fascinating. Good. He usually hangs out on the 3rd floor, so I'll run upstairs and see if I can find him. Okay. Roz watched as Morgane left and then crossed the room to where Conrad was leaning against the mantelpiece. Conrad said, I was thinking about you all morning when I wasn't playing Ghostbusters. He captured her waist and pulled her toward him for a quick peck on the lips and a hug. Her arms around his neck seemed to be shaking. Roz, are you all right? Yeah, it's just that, well, there's been a lot to take in lately. Our strange new way of communicating. Morgane's a witch and a medium. We have a ghost in the building. What next? Vampires and werewolves. Conrad chuckled nervously. Don't worry, darling. I won't let the boogeyman get you. Don't think about it, don't think about it. Don't think about what? Nothing. I got fired today, that's all. She sucked in a breath. Really? Is it because you were arrested? Yes. They can't be too careful, you know. But you weren't guilty. He shrugged. I don't think they should get away with that. Let me look into grounds for a wrongful termination case. Her lips thinned to a hard line. No, don't. I was ready to quit anyway. It just isn't worth the aggravation. She took his hand. I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm not. Now I can be awake during the day and see more of you. He winked. And maybe help Morgane, Roz added. Are you sure she's for real? I'm pretty darn sure. Look, I believe in certain things I can't explain away with logic. Psychics, for instance. I know the government has been doing psychic research, and it does seem like there's a large portion of our brains that most of us don't use. He nodded but didn't want to say anything, so she'd continue talking. What else did she believe in? Some are charlatans, to be sure, but I guess some have a certain amount of credibility. Do you believe she's the real deal? Conrad squeezed her hand. I've seen her talk to Chad, and at the museum she seemed to go into a trance, and I heard the voice of someone else come out of her mouth. Were you with her the whole time? Had she been there before? That was the second time she'd been there. Gwyneth went with her first. Guess they could have rigged something up before, but if she can demonstrate something here on the fly, I know I'll be impressed. Do you want to look around to be sure she didn't plant any microphones? Good idea. Roz began to check the couch cushions where Morgane had been sitting when a knock sounded at the door. I'll get it. Conrad opened the door, but no one was there. Then he heard footsteps on the stairs and Morgane came into view. I guess Chad got here before me. Conrad stepped back and waited for Morgane to enter. Is he here? She cocked her head as if listening to someone whisper in her ear. Yes, he's here. And he wants to know what you're looking for in the sofa cushions. Conrad shut the door and changed the subject. Ready? I am, are you? Morgane asked, looking at Roz. She took a deep breath and nodded. Chad, you know Conrad and Roz, right? Know them? That's a stretch. I know who they are. The tall one with long hair, who turns into a wolf at the full moon, that's Conrad. The chubby one with glasses and her hair in a bun is Roz. What her deal is, I haven't heard yet. Enlighten me. Roz is a lawyer, Morgane said. I may need her help in the museum case I'm working on. Why? Did you catch the thief? Not yet. Conrad and Roz stared alternately at her and at each other. At one point they both shrugged. Okay, I need to demonstrate to Roz and Conrad that you and I are really communicating. What can you tell me about them that I wouldn't know? Have you been in Roz's apartment before? I was here when Mary lived here, but this is the first time since Roz moved in. Good. Have you been in her bedroom yet? No. I've only been out here in the living room. I see what you're getting at. Maybe you can find something in her bedroom that I've never seen. Describe it to me in detail, and I'll tell them what it is. You're pretty smart for a woman who wears black lipstick and nail polish. I'm not wearing the black lipstick today, in case you didn't notice. I try to be more conservative when I visit the museum. Chad laughed. Morgane rolled her eyes. Whatever. Get on with it, please. I've already been in there. Tell her she left the top drawer open in her bedside table and there are 3 things in it. A box of tissues, a book, and a long plastic cylinder. Bright pink. Good. That's very specific. Morgaine faced Roz. He said you left your bedside table drawer open. There's a book, a box of tissues, and some kind of pink plastic cylinder in it. Roz's jaw dropped and she turned bright red. What's wrong? Oh, and extra batteries. I forgot to mention them. Roz coughed and composed herself. Nothing. Tell him to look for something else. Chad was laughing hysterically. Chad, what did you do? Can I help it if she likes to read erotica and keeps a vibrator handy? Morgaine dropped her head in her hands. She straightened, took a deep breath, and tried again. Chad, cut the shit. Now find something else and don't embarrass the poor woman. Conrad smiled. Okay. I'm going into her closet. Never mind. It's dark in there. I'll try the bathroom. Morgaine waited and tapped her foot. Roz folded her hands and bit her lower lip. Here's something. It's behind the shower curtain, so unless you've taken a shower with her. Of course I haven't. Now tell me what you're seeing. She has about a dozen bath products. One of those natural sponges, a purple washcloth, a set of red plastic bottles with all kinds of perfumey triplo. Goddess bless you. Roz tipped her head, and the furrow between her brows deepened. Okay, he said there's a loofah, a purple washcloth, and a set of bath products in red bottles behind your shower curtain. He seems to be allergic to them. Not really, but I was allergic to all kinds of stuff when I was alive. Sneezing is just a force of habit, I guess. Conrad rose. Roz? Morgaine? Do you want to check his information? No, it sounds pretty accurate, Roz said. You two can look if you want to. Conrad smiled. I'll admit I'm curious. You wouldn't mind. Be my guest. Morgaine stayed seated. I'll wait here just in case there's other stuff in there he can describe. Roz shrugged. No need to. I'm satisfied that you're really communicating with a spirit, Morgaine supplied. Roz shivered. Conrad rejoined them. Well, I'll be damned. It's exactly like he said. Then he strolled over to Roz and bumped her playfully. No wonder you smell like cinnamon, spice, and everything nice. That's the fragrance in those bottles. Roz rolled her eyes. Okay, buddy. I've been embarrassed enough for one day. She turned to Morgaine. You said you're a medium. Can Chad speak through you? Yes, we've done it. Neither of us likes it very much, but he might be willing to give you a quick demonstration. I'd like to see it, she said. Chad, are you okay with that? Ugh, if I must. You have no idea how disgusting it is to push myself down through your gray matter so I can use your brain, lungs, and vocal cords. It's no picnic for me either. Although it might be fun to say things you can't censor, like the juicy sex scene she was reading last night. Morgaine sighed. Chad, behave yourself. We don't need to hear about Roz's reading material. You know what? Roz said. I don't really need to hear him speak. If I go to the museum with you, I'll hear the other ghosts talk through you, right? Morgaine smiled. You're a wise woman.